Random House Audio presents The Collected Short Stories of Louis L'Amour. Unabridged selections from the Frontier Stories, Volume 3, by Louis L'Amour. Read for you by Jason Culp. Shandy Takes the Hook. For 3 days, Shandy Gamble had been lying on his back in the Perigord house, awaiting the stranger in the black mustache. Nichols, his name was, and if they were ever going to start cattle buying, they had better be moving. The season was already late. Shandy Gamble was 17 years old and tall for his age. In fact, he was tall for any age. 4 inches over 6 feet, he was all feet, hands, and shoulders. With his shirt off, you could count every rib in his lean body. Perigord was the biggest town Shandy had ever seen. In fact, it was only the 3rd town he had seen in his life. With the cattle buyers in town, there was most 1,000 head of folks, and on the street Shandy felt uncomfortable and mighty crowded. Most of his time he spent down at the horse corrals or lying on his bed waiting for Nichols. He had come to town to buy himself a new saddle and bridle, maybe a new hat and shirt. He was a saving man, Shandy Gamble was, despite his youth. Now he not only was holding his own money, but $500 belonging to Nichols. Had it not been for that, he wouldn't have waited, for by now he was homesick for the KT outfit. Nichols was a big, powerful man with a smooth-shaved face and black, prominent eyes. He also had black hair and a black mustache. Shandy had been leaning on the corral gate when Nichols approached him. "Good afternoon, sir." Nichols thrust out a huge hand. "I understand you're a cattleman." Shandy Gamble blinked. Nobody had ever called him a cattleman before, and his chest swelled appreciably. He was a $40-a-month cowhand, although at the moment he did have $552 in his pocket. $52 was saved from his wages, and the $500 was half the reward money for nailing 2 horse thieves back in the Cedar Country. Shandy had tracked them back there for Deputy Sheriff Holloway, and then when they killed Holloway, he got mad and went in after them. He brought one out dead and one so badly mauled he wished he was dead. There was $1,000 on their heads, and Shandy tried to give it to Mrs. Holloway, but she would accept only half. Shandy shifted uneasily on the bed. It was time Nichols got back. The proposition had sounded good, no question about that. "You can't beat it, Gamble," Nichols had said. "You know cattle, and I've the connections in Kansas City and Chicago. We can ride over the country, buying cattle, then ship and sell them. A nice profit for both of us." "That would take money, and I ain't got much," Shandy had said. Nichols eyed him thoughtfully. No use telling the boy he had seen that roll when Shandy paid for his room in advance. "It won't take much to start." Nichols scowled as he considered the size of Shandy's roll. "Say $1,000. "Shucks," Shandy was regretful. "I ain't got but $500. "Fine." Nichols clapped him on the shoulder. "We're partners, then. You put up $500 and I'll put up $500. We'll bank that here and then start buying. I've got unlimited credit east of here, and when the 1,000 is gone, we'll draw on that. At this stage, you'll be the one doing most of the thinking, so you won't need to put as much cash into it as I do." Well, Shandy was not sure. It sounded like a good deal, and who knew cows better than he did? He had been practically raised with cows. "Maybe it would be a good deal. Old Ed France has a herd nobody's looked at. Nice fat stock, too." "Good." Nichols clapped him on the shoulder again. From his pocket, he took a long brown envelope and a sheaf of bills. Very carefully, he counted off $500 and stuck it into the envelope. "Now your $500. Shandy dug down and hauled out his bills and counted off the $500 and tucked it into the envelope. "Now," Nichols started to put the envelope in his pocket, "we'll go to the bank and—" He stopped, then withdrew the envelope. "No, you just keep this on you. We'll bank it later." Shandy Gamble accepted the fat envelope and stuck it into his shirt. Nichols glanced at his watch, then rubbed his jaw. "Tell you what," Nichols said, "I've got to catch the stage for Holbrook. I'll be back tomorrow night. You stick around and don't let this money out of your hands, whatever you do. I'll see you at the hotel." Shandy watched him go, shrugged, and went back to watching the horses. There was a fine black gelding there. Now, if he was a cattle buyer, he would own that gelding, buy the new saddle and bridle and some fancy clothes like Jim Finnegan wore, and would he show that outfit back on the KT? The wait had dampened his enthusiasm. Truth was, he liked the KT and liked working with the boys. They were a good outfit. He rolled over on the bed and swung his feet to the floor. Reaching for his boots, he shoved his big feet into them and stood up. To blazes with it. He'd open the envelope, leave the money in the bank for Nichols, and go back to the outfit. He was no cattle buyer anyway. He was a cowhand. Taking out the brown envelope, he ripped it open. Slowly, he turned cold and empty inside, and stood there, his jaw slack, his shock of corn-silk hair hanging over his face. The envelope was stuffed with old newspapers. The spring grass faded from green to brown, and dust gathered in the trails. Waterholes shrank, and the dried earth cracked around them, and the cattle grew gaunt. It was a hard year on the Caprock, and that meant work for the hands. Shandy Gamble was in the saddle 18 to 20 hours most days, rounding up strays and pushing them south to the gullies and remaining waterholes. When he had returned without his saddle, there was a lot of jawing about it, and the boys all poked fun at Shandy, but he grinned widely and took it, letting them believe he had drunk it up or spent it on women. Jim Finnegan rode out one day on a gray horse. He was looking the situation over and making estimates on the beef to be had after the fall roundup. Shandy was drifting south with 3 head of gaunted stock when they met. Gamble drew up and Finnegan joined him. "Howdy, son. Stock looks poor." "Yeah," Shandy dug for the makings. "We need rain plumb bad." He rolled his smoke, then asked quietly, "You ever hear of a buyer named Nichols? Big black-eyed man?" Shandy's description was accurate and painstaking, the sort of description a man might give who was used to reading sign, and who 30 seconds after a glimpse of a horse or cow could describe its every hair and ailment. "Nichols? You've forgotten the name, son. No, the hombre you describe is Abel Koch. He's a card slick and confidence man. Brute of a fighter, too. Brags he never saw the man could stand up to him in a fist fight." "Seen him around?" "Yeah, he was around Fort Worth earlier this year. He rousts around with the June boys." The June boys. There were 5 of the Junes, the old man, Pete June, and the 4 outlaw sons, Alec, Tom, Buck, and Windy. All were gunslicks, bad men, dirty, unkempt drifters, known to be killers, believed to be horse and cow thieves, and suspected of some out-and-out murders. 2 nights later, back at the bunkhouse, Johnny Smith rode in with the mail, riding down from Tuckup Way, where he had stopped to ask after some iron work being done for the ranch by the Tuckup blacksmith. Tuckup was mostly an outlaw town, but the blacksmith there was the best around. Cowhands do most of their own work, but the man at Tuckup could make anything with iron, and the KT boss had been getting some fancy andirons for his fireplace. "Keelin' over to Tuckup," Johnny said as he swung down. "That Sullivan from Brady Canyon tangled with Windy June. Windy bored him plenty." Shandy Gamble's head came up. "June? The rest of that outfit there?" "Sure, the whole shooting match of June's." "Big black-eyed fellow with him, black mustache?" "Koch? Sure as you know he is. He whooped the blacksmith. Beat him so bad he couldn't finish the old man's andirons."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?